Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar show that talks about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to the divine, the mystical moments that we experience that, sometimes we're even a little afraid to tell other people because they'll think we're crazy or something. Like how do we talk about those things? Well, Kerri Hummingbird loves those conversations, and that is me, and so I've created a whole platform around it. We can share our stories, we can connect with one another, we know what's true, we know what happened for us, and we're on our own little thumbprint journeys. I like to think of our bodies like these little thumbprint suits, like we can slide it on as a soul and get in it and walk around in it and perceive through it. And we have like 9 billion something people on the planet doing all the same thing and having a different experience. And so sometimes the Venn diagrams overlap and we understand each other, and sometimes they don't. But when you're a messenger, your job is to really try to communicate in a way that other people with different thumbprint suits will understand you and what you're trying to say. So that is really what we got our guest on today for, Robert Clancy. Welcome, Robert, to the show.
Well, thanks for having me here again. It's so much fun and just a pleasure to really share with you because it's just so open, and I love this format.
Yeah, I love to have fun with my friends. So, Robert was on the show before, and you might have seen that show, Touched by an Angel. We had his story of actually like real life meeting an angel, like an angel appearing right before him and touching his forehead. I mean, that's very intense. And that was didn't involve any drugs as far as I remember that story.
No.
No, it was purely sober. So, this is a really unique experience that he had. And so today we're going to talk actually about Robert's new book, which is screenplay, and it's being investigated in Hollywood right now to make it into a movie, and so this is very exciting. And now it's like, how do we tell the story of this, to reach other people with their thumbprint suits and their current understanding of life. So this is really interesting. So Robert is actually a creative visionary. He's a #1 international best-selling author. He's a spiritual teacher. He's a Christian minister and co-founder of Spiral Design. And so, yeah, at 19, he had this really amazing mystical experience with one of God's angels. Totally changed his life in profound ways. And he had to keep that secret for 30 years. So almost like a burden on the soul to keep that kind of information to yourself. So in 2012, he created Robert Clancy Guide to the Soul Facebook fan page, and he starts just sharing his divinely inspired thoughts. Well, he's an open channel for this. So he's a speaker, presenter, and guest. And, I just love Robert because I know him from, the Evolutionary Business Council where we met, and I know him from the late night health radio show with another one of our good friends, and also the Mindset Reset show with others of our good friends. So we have a lot of friends together. You guys should check all that out. I'm going to put all the links down below, as well as to his first book, his latest book, Soul Cyphers. And so let's just dive in. This new book, Messengers, really explores this idea of like, how does a messenger grow? Like, how do you become a messenger in order to really deliver the big message that you're, pouring through you from spirit?
Yeah, it's for me, in this journey of writing this book finally, and really, I came out of the spiritual closet in 2012. So that's when the messages started really flowing into me. And I just decided, the night that I told my dad about the angel, it was the night my mother was on her deathbed. And I wanted him to be at peace. And I realized I can't keep this a secret, that the world needs to know. And I can't take this to the grave. And I need to own my truth. And so, in the journey of writing this book, in exploring my own journey of the messenger and encountering one, that it's really to show that we're all messengers, that we all have a message to share, something. Every person on this planet, we're not humans with souls, we're souls surrounding our humanity. And it's, it can be a prison, or it can be the most free, open thing that you can ever have. And that comes from love. And that's really the vessel that we have. And I've had some pretty interesting conversations since 2012, and just some beautiful people that have come into my life to really share their messages as well.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot of language, messaging, with each other. Like, this idea of the thumbprint suit I love, because that came through me one day. I was asking my guidance. I was like, okay, you want me to go out and talk about love and talk about all this stuff that you teach me, but how am I going to do that when everybody has different ideas, you know? And then they all think I'm right, you're wrong, and this whole game's going on in the earth. Like, so, you know, how do we have a conversation about it between people with different ideas? And this was the, how do I know? Like, what can I tell everybody that they'll all get? And it was this thumbprint idea. It's like, you're all unique and you're all having your own experience. That's you know, it's completely unique, but you're all equal. So, you know, everybody's
Correct.
right at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
We're all
And
right at the same time.
it's that, love is the very thread that holds the fabric of the universe together. And that's what connects us all. It's it's unbreakable, unchangeable, unending, infinite. It's everything. And that's what I've been exploring. And that was really my journey, and my message is to understand what those four letters actually mean.
That is, it's because it can be a concept or it can be an actual embodiment, and or a vibration, you know, so it's like it can reflect in so many ways because it's multidimensional. So I feel like the entry point to talk about what is love has so many layers to it. Like there's practical aspects, there's, you know, embodiment aspects, there's vibratory aspects, there's conceptual. I mean, so where do you want to dive into this conversation, Robert? Because we could.
Yeah, it's the connection of two hearts, and how that connects to the divine. And really, that's the conversation that I've had my entire life, is really to understand. And I've been surrounded in love my entire life. And then there's when I went off the rails, and it was just abandoned, and felt so lost in that dark place. And that's when the divine experience happened. So I realized that we're always held, and I've had to, live with knowing, which, walking for 30 years, I used to, put my hand on someone's shoulder and say, yeah, you might want to say a prayer, kind of,
Ask for help, you mean?
just kind of saying, I'm not overtly religious, but there was, once you have that, I don't think you can live any other way. And, the angel gave me so many things and took away just a few things. Took away fear, took away doubt, took away worry, and took away faith. Because faith is a belief in something that you're not sure of, and I'm sure because I was shown proof. And then the struggle with that is you don't feel worthy. You don't feel worthy that you're carrying this, why was I selected? And that was my challenge. It's like, why me? And I questioned that for 30 years. And then on December 1st, 2012, I woke up with the first major grouping of downloads that came to me. And it just said, why ask why when you should ask why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not me? Why ask why when you should ask why not? That's really good. You know, what's interesting is that you had a really bold experience of the divine, like undeniable experience. Mind-blowing, like, oh my gosh, like ripping back the veil, like,
Yeah.
wow, experience. And that was really profound.
Yeah, when I was, it was when I meditated for the first time, but I also, before I started the meditation, I was literally at rock bottom. I was done with life. I just said, that's it. And I yelled at God. I was just like, if you exist, show me. Do it tonight. This is your chance. And then I said, also, I need to be healed. So have at it. And this is after I had several friends who, I lost to suicide, car accidents, just my whole life fell apart, just everything. It was devastated. In like 2 months, it was gone. And I just was like, I'm done. And this, so I started meditating. It was about 3 hours in, and then I saw the light, and I opened my eyes, and I kind of shrugged my shoulders. So I'm like, well, this was a waste of time, because it was like, I thought it was a light shining through my window, and I couldn't break the beam. And then I just sat there, and I kept closing my eyes and opening them because I could see it either way. And I thought, well, this is interesting, but I don't know what's going on. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. So, and then it flashed, and I said exactly what you said. I didn't say, oh my gosh, I said, oh my God, out loud, because I saw the angel. And then it looked like there was a hole in my room in the wall, and then the hole enlarged to the size of the room, and this 7-foot being came through and went right nose to nose with me. I could see with my eyes open or closed. So there's God's answer. You want to see? How's this? Right in your face.
Yeah, right in your face.
And I believe that she kissed me, but this was almost like ghost-like, semi-transparent, all white, like a statue, like a marble statue kind of essence to it. And I just stared into her face. This wasn't just for a few seconds. Felt like an hour. I got to study every feather, every bead on her dress, the sandals, the whole thing. I mean, it looked exactly like what you'd expect an angel to look like. And when I closed my eyes, I saw the swirling light coming out of her onto me. And then when she touched my forehead, that's when my whole body got warm. And then all this data, just like my entire life, like thousands, like everything, just all at once. And just slideshows of pictures, and I knew that I had to work with youth. That was shown to me. I knew the angel's name was Gabriel. All this data, and I thought, I actually talked to myself in the mirror, because I put my hands on the counter of the bathroom, and I said, dude, that just happened, and you're going to have to live with knowing. You're going to have to carry that for the rest of your life. And I wanted to tell the whole world. I wanted to run. I went outside and I just looked at the sky, and I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, like, heaven is real, God's real. And I didn't tell anyone. I went to sleep with a smile, and it was a few years later that I told the first person. He was somebody that I had a struggle with, a little bit of a journey, and I thought he had a big head, kind of ego thing, and ended up manifesting that, because he ended up with brain cancer, and his head actually was physically enlarged the last day that I saw him. And I told him about the angel. I wanted him to be at peace, and he's sort of my ego check. I told him, won't see you here, but I know you'll be around me. And I ended up, the day before, I was with a whole group of people that knew him, and they said the most beautiful things about him. And I wrote them all down. And I read them to him the last night that he was in the hospital before he passed away.
Yeah, it's interesting when you finally get the message that you are completely loved, held, supported, guided, and that you're having an experience right now. And that the experience you're having right now as a human is really not anything. It's just a little tiny speck of dust in the wholeness of you. Like, you're so beyond that, but you're loved in your humanity. Like,
right.
And I think I lived a good part of my life not knowing that, not really knowing that. I mean, I suspected it because I really liked being outside in nature, and I really loved flowers, and I loved to paint, and I loved to try to replicate the beauty I saw in nature, like on the canvas. So I thought to myself, well, people just aren't seeing the beauty. Like, they're just missing out on the beauty. They're not seeing it. I see it.
It's the little tiny things that are the most beautiful things in life.
Like, all these little moments that I was spending basically meditating. That was my meditation, was to do art, But I could feel something bigger, but I didn't have any proof, or I didn't know. And then I went on a really dark part of my journey where I just went into a pit of despair,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like you were talking about. And I got in that eat, pray, love moment where I'm like on the floor, like, please freaking help me. Okay. This is awful. Like, there are nightmares, and I don't want to live, and I really want to get out of here. And it was like God came down and turned off the tear spigot, just like, like, I didn't have anymore. I was like, oh, that's interesting. In that moment, they came back, but
yeah.
But I think, these are things I didn't, I only gradually started realizing it. But you had this like big moment. I mean, I can't even fathom. Mine was very gradual. Like, I think if that had happened to me, I might have freaked out. I think that's the true of many of us too. Like, that's why awakening happens for each person uniquely. because each person is a soul that's here in this earth school, right? And having an experience pertinent to that person's soul, which, you know, therefore and I love this. Somebody said to me the other day, they said, that their teacher had told them, think of Earth as a classroom, a single room classroom that includes babies, toddlers, school-age kids, teenagers,
Right.
young adults, wisdom keepers, you know, like everybody's
Yeah.
in the same one-room classroom.
Right. Exactly. And, you know, the divine experience, that wasn't my only one. I actually had something happen when I was about 7 or 8 years old too.
Oh, what was that one?
I was playing in the woods behind our house with a bunch of friends, and there was like this jello like mud, and we would jump on it, but if you stood on it too long, you'd start to sink. But it was like springy. And we put a stick in it, and the stick, you know, sunk down in it, and we put rocks on it and disappeared into it. And then we had to go to dinner. Well, I went back on my own after dinner. I got my winter boots and I wanted to jump on it, and I got stuck. And then the mud went over the top of the boots, went up to my knees.
Oh, wow.
And then I
Like
started
quicksand.
struggling. Yeah, I started struggling in it, and I'm in the swamp, and I'm, you know, at least 100 yards, maybe 150 yards away from a neighbor's fence. You know, the whole neighborhood lined the back of that area, and they all those picket fences, you know, the tall, you know. And then I started panicking when I got to my waist, and I started scooping the mud away with my left hand, and then my left hand got stuck. And it literally got up to my chest until my head was resting on the ground. And the more I struggled, you know, you'd sink. And then I thought, I have this much space to live. And I thought about my parents, that they're not going to find me. And that, you know, they say your life flashes before you, but all I thought about was who I loved and who was going to miss me, you know, and those things. And then there was this little pine branch next to me, and I could just touch it with my hand, but I hadn't noticed it, obviously, because it's on the ground and it's only this tall. But it's in the needles, those small things that you were talking about. I saw the Fibonacci sequence or something in the pine needles, the way that they spiraled around that. I never noticed that before in my life. And then I was just at peace, and I surrendered. And I said, okay, I'm ready. And I heard this voice with my whole body just said one more yell. And I had been screaming my brains out for an hour, you know, like sinking in this stuff, screaming for help. And I thought for a split second, there's no one coming, and I've been screaming, so it's not going to do any good. I was still just sniffling, you know, and it just said, right now. And just like a whoosh. So I let out this little tiny yell for help. And about 5 minutes later, this guy who looked like Paul Bunyan, wearing flannel and waders, you know, like what you do fly fishing with, was at the other side of the swamp heading the wrong way. And I was yelling, I'm over here. And he's looking, because it's just a head sticking out of the ground at this point. And I was elated, and this guy used all his strength to pull me out of this. And my boots got sucked off into the thing there. My socks were hanging like two brown sausages off my feet, and I was covered head to toe with mud. And I was probably in PTS, you know, when they carried me in. But I remember being on his back, like he had me over his shoulder, and I kept looking, and I was bouncing, looking at the where I almost died. They took me to this backyard, and they said, do you know, if you were a cat, you just used up your 9 lives. And they said, you're so lucky, because right when you yelled, we let our daughter out in the backyard to pick up her toys, and she thought there was a cat stuck in the woods, and she begged her dad to go get it. And they didn't hear anything else. And she kept saying, no, there's a cat out there. You need to go save it. And it was me. I heard
Wow.
that voice. I know what I heard, because I've heard it 2 other times in my life beyond that. Yeah.
That's amazing. 7 years old.
Yeah.
Facing your mortality.
Yeah. And I don't know how, you know, but I was sitting there, my chin was on the ground, and I thought, you know, I just surrendered. I just said, okay, take me, I'm ready. So I thought my body went limp. I just was like, I gave up, and I just said, I'm done. and I'm going to stop struggling, because I knew that that was making it worse anyway. But I just wanted to slow down the process in my last moments.
Wow. Oh, that's pretty deep, Robert. So,
Hmm.
I mean, that can really change your perspective on life when you're 7, right
Yeah.
when you're, pretty much just at the age of reason.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting that that's when it happened.
Yeah. And you
That
just
big
kind of,
opening into the bigger picture.
and then there's like, why, at age 6, I was in Jamaica, and I almost was stung by a Portuguese man of war. And this guy saved me, this Jamaican guy who actually taught me how to swim. So he saved my life 3 times in 3 different ways on that trip. And people were saying when I started telling them the story, like, you really need to stay away from water and stuff. I'm thinking, yeah. And actually, it was only about 4 or 5 years ago that I learned how to properly do swim strokes. I mean, I knew how to swim, but not very well. But I actually learned like the side swim, all the different types of swimming at a Boy Scout camp when I was volunteering. I had them teach me.
How did your mother handle the fact that you were constantly at death's door?
They,
I mean,
when it first happened with the Portuguese man of war, jellyfish, the guy, it ended up stinging him, and I begged them to let him take me to the village, because he told me about how he risked his life to dive for coral to sell to villagers. And they made arrangements with the resort, and this is in like 1971. So I ended up going to this destitute village. But what unfolded there, and I was the only one there, it was just him and I and the villagers, people think, oh, that didn't happen. No parent would let their kid go, off with some strange guy to something. But this guy had ended up saving my life, so it kind of, and they felt his soul, I think, and they checked into it, and they let me go. And all the kids in the village had tattered clothes, and they ended up presenting all this fruit to me, and they put it all around me. And then the village elder came out, and they had a palm leaf crown, and they put it on my head that they had made, so it was all woven. And then they put me on a donkey, and they walked me around it was like round huts that had thatch roofs and almost like an adobe type structure. And they walked me around the whole village while the kids were trailing behind me singing a traditional Christian Jamaican hymn, a reggae style. And I can still see the faces of the kids. And I kept saying, no, I'm just like you. You don't have to do this. And I found out from actually Daniel Brinkley, when I was being interviewed by him. He said, do you know what that ceremony is? He said, that ceremony is when they welcome a spiritual leader to their village. It emulates when Jesus came to Nazareth.
wow, that's amazing.
And then I was questioning that throughout my life, like, what did they see? Like, why me again? And that's been my journey, throughout this entire life, is why? Why does this stuff keep happening to me? What is it I'm supposed to do? And there's
Yeah, what
even
is it you're
more.
supposed to do? Well, okay, I can understand the discomfort with it because there's, there's this thing where I'll just say this one moment with Alberto Vialdo, because I studied with the Four Winds Light Body School. And I was asking Alberto, I was like, oh, I don't know if I should share this story with this other woman, because it seems like that's my life and I think I'm projecting. And he was like, no, Kerri, that's just because you think you're special. Like you think you're special. And I realized there was a lot of that. Like I did think that. I think now that there's a certain level of knowing that the ego has many little hooks to pull you out of your spiritual place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a more advanced soul is very aware of that. Like
Yeah.
very aware of that treacherous terrain of like, okay, I want to be humble
Right.
because I want to be sure I'm in my spirit and not my, my ego.
Correct.
But then at the same time, there's also another trick of the ego that's like self-deprecation that makes you stop like from shining as brightly as you could.
Right. Yeah. And I know that because, as you said, like I have this screenplay, and people are like, "Oh my God, that's so amazing that they're going to make a movie about you and all this." And I'm like, "It's not about that.
Yeah,
It
it's not.
is, but
It's
it
about the
isn't.
message.
It's about, for me, I need to tell this story, and that's the best way that I can reach the most people. And I know how much hope will come from this because I've carried that hope inside me for 30 years. And it's not a need or a want. It's just has to be. I have to do this.
Well, okay, so now what's coming to me is that we all admit that we're on the cusp of a big leap in consciousness on Earth. Like this is the age of Aquarius. Like we are on the midst of a turning of the consciousness, like a going to the upper room, going to the upper octave, the next octave up. Like, okay, so if we're doing that, we need some examples of what's possible, right? Like the collective consciousness needs to see, oh, there's more cool stuff that's possible when you're a
Mhm.
soul that knows how to play this earth game a little bit better,
Yeah.
right? So it seems to me like you've gotten to serve in that capacity. Like when Jesus came, Jesus was showing what's possible. Hey, look, this is what's possible when you know how to be a soul on earth, like in your full mastery. You can do these kinds of things. Like you can all do these kinds of things, right? That was really the message. I'm just an example, a little ahead of schedule to give you an idea of what's possible. So in a way, I feel like that's the same here. As like you know what I'm saying? Like your soul set you up for like a lot of examples of what's possible on this earth plane. We could all be having these kinds of, eventually down the line.
And there's another part to this. So 4 years ago, we hosted, for me, a German exchange student through a series of coincidences. We weren't planning on hosting, and then we had an Italian boy who needed to come out of a family, so it's just for half of the year. And then a month later, they said, "Oh, you have extra room in your house. Are you able to host this girl? She's not having a great experience where she's staying now." And so we're like, yeah, we got extra, rooms here in the house because it's got like 4 bedrooms and there's only 3 of us. So, or 5 bedrooms and there's only 3. So there's 2 extra bedrooms. And this girl shows up on my doorstep, and she looks up, and I'm thinking, oh my God, do I tell this person they look like the angel I saw 30 years ago? Because
Wow.
she looks exactly like she could be the angel's daughter. And the older she gets, the more she looks like the angel. So it was about a week or two in, and she read back in her diary because she had kept something. And there was time that we were riding the car, and the boys were all teasing her, saying that she was ugly and trying to get a rise out of her. And finally, I got really frustrated, and I said, "She is not ugly. In fact, she's quite beautiful. She looks exactly like an angel. I know because I've seen one." And she wrote that down. And I ended up telling her and her mother, and it turns out that she didn't have a very good experience with her father. She doesn't even know what he looks like, and there was abuse when she was younger, and all these things. And so I became her dad, and that's the journey that we're on. And I know she has an angelic soul. There's no question in my mind that, because she looks like the angel. Why was that shown to me 30 years ago? And then this person's here, and now, is it so that I recognize them? Is it because maybe it was that the angel and now it's in a human form? I don't know. But she has funny phrases that she said. The other day she said, "I really like being in a body." Really like I like living. It
Yeah.
was just odd things. Or she doesn't say, "Why do people do that?" She says, "Why do humans do things like that?"
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that language.
Uh-huh.
I have those thoughts in my head too.
And it's almost as if I've always known that there was this daughter coming, and we have this journey to explore what that kind of love is like.
Mm.
So I was telling her about this movie, and I said, "I saw this movie. You probably don't even know it. It's an independent film. It's a daughter and a father." She said, "I've seen it." I said, "No, I haven't told you the name." She said, "Oh, I know what the name is. It's Midnight Sun. And I said, yes, I saw it 2 weeks ago. And she said, I saw it 2 weeks ago. And I said, I cried when this, and she's like, that's when I cried, is when that, because we understand what that kind of love is. And just, so there's this journey that's unfolding now, and we're trying to figure it out. Like, why does this, so it's another question of why in my life. And so I have this amazing daughter, an amazing son, an amazing wife. And it's almost like, and she lives in Germany. So there's this, I haven't seen her in person in 3 years, but she's coming here in a couple of weeks.
Oh, beautiful.
And it's, we said the same thing at the same time. It's like there's a hole in our heart when we're not all together as a family.
Yeah. That just demonstrates a few things for me. One thing is that family is who you choose to make it to be.
Correct.
And that there's different types of family relatives, so to speak. For the second wave people, because it's my download that many of us are from other places in the galaxy, came here on Earth to have a game and see what it's like on Earth and extend to consciousness at the same time, right? Like, get inside this human form and see what it can do, And so there's this experience of soul family that one can have.
Yes.
Where you know each other, like when you see each other and you look each other in the eye, you're like, I know you. I don't know you like who you are being right now, but I know the soul and that's infusing this being, like I know you. And that's a really fun thing, is people's eyes sparkle and kind of like see that person. And I think it's maybe like the infusion of the divine in that person. But then also, I do believe that we're our souls and we're sort of like pods coming to Earth School. And sometimes you land in a pod that's not yours, on purpose. Which is what happens sometimes. You land in a pod that maybe they're all together having their life lessons, and you sort of, came in and interrupted the patterns by your beingness inside that pod.
Yeah, and I've been given enough pieces of the puzzle. Like, most people don't see exactly why they're here. And I know I question, like, why me, but more of it's filled in. And I get words like, we never know the great picture God paints for us because we're always standing on the canvas. And then I got the second half of this recently. So this was like 2 years ago, I got those words. And then the second part came in, which is even more profound than that. It's that the only thing that you can change in life is how you frame that picture that God paints for you. And sometimes the frame is even more beautiful than the painting itself. And that's perspective. That's like keeping that mindset of free will. You have the choice of how you can frame each day, how you can frame each moment of your life. And sometimes that gilding around that picture, the frame is more valuable than the picture itself.
Yeah, because their perspective is pretty much everything, That's what really I like to think about being eagle, being eagle or condor. They fly the highest in the sky.
Right.
And a lot of times we're invested in being jaguar,
yeah.
Which is sort of like the limbic brain, the emotional brain. And we're like prowling around as jaguar, like, arr, arr, like having this like earth experience. But, really the bigger perspective, I mean, I think we came here for the earth experience, right? We came here for jaguar. But we also came here to bring eagle to the picture, like to have the bigger picture and then come down and then go up and then come down. And it's just nice to have the interplay of all these.
Well, I have a perfect example of that. I had this woman that approached me, and she'd heard my story about the angel. And she said, I really need to hear that today because I have lost all faith. I've lost all hope. You see, my daughter and, my daughter-in-law, my brother and his wife were all murdered.
Wow, that's hard.
Were murdered, and he died suddenly, and then the other two were murdered, and just awful, And then her boyfriend died in her arms too, and she's just like, I'm done. She said, if there was a God, I know he would have that, and if there's another side, that he would not have let that happen. He would not have let them get murdered. He would have watched over them. He would have saved them. And the perspective and the words just came to me immediately. I looked at her and I said, how do you know the savings happens here? maybe it's on the other side. And she looked like she got electrocuted. She went and she said, "Oh my God, I've never thought about that." And then she was like thinking about it, and I saw her 2 years later. I didn't even recognize her because she was smiling ear to ear. She came over and she's like, "Hi, how are you?" And her whole life had just changed. And I ended up writing the victim's impact statement that was read in court for that family, and it was only written in love.
Yeah, because we don't really know what the soul agreements are.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, I talk the language of karma, and karma is, you know, just basically means whatever you do to somebody else, you get to experience it yourself. You know, like, so it's like, basically, you know, it's not a punishment. It's just sort of like, oh, we're
Yeah,
here to
you want some
experience.
of that? Here you go.
There you go. Let's try that out. See how you like it. You know, like sort of playing a game together. I think of it that way. I think it's a bunch of souls playing a game together. Like, oh, I want to experience that. Okay, I'm going to experience that now. And that's how we learn and grow. I feel like you can tell an old soul because an old soul doesn't need to be told not to steal. The old soul already knows that through life experience. It already had an experience long ago of what it feels like to do it and receive it. And it just knows I'm not interested in that. You know, so I feel like the ones that are sort of still playing that, they just haven't learned that lesson. That's all. There's like a whole bunch of stuff to try, and they haven't done that one yet, so they don't really know how they feel about it
And
until they
those are
do it.
words that have, those words have been used for me almost my entire life. Ever since I was a child, people would come up and say, "Oh, he's an old soul." We can tell.
Because you can see the game, you know, and because once you can see the game being played, then you don't really get upset about it anymore. You just sort of have compassion for the experience of it and have, but you know, your inner state is peace. It's like, I know that this is happening by design.
But there's always something that good that comes out of it. There's always balance. And I always look at that other side, because when, you're thinking, I really want this to happen. I want, to go through that. And then it doesn't come through. And you're like, why did that? I need that. Why didn't this come through? And it's like something got delayed because something bigger, better was over here. And I just wait for the bigger, better thing to unfold, whatever that is.
You know, okay, well, I'm going to take that conversation into what we talked about before you came on, which is like your Hollywood experience with them, like telling like, this is the story that he's really having. No, it's this story, and debating it in front of you. And then you're like, wait a second, I'm right here. Like, to me, that's like, that's, so to explain a little bit what's happening, because the people don't know exactly
Yeah.
what's happening.
So, the screenplay's in development, and they're trying to convert the book, which may or may not translate, perfectly to screen, but they're trying to figure out what the hero's journey is in this. And the hero's journey is like, what did I have? So they talk about, you have the protagonist, and then there's an antagonist, or there's a challenge, and then there's either a resolution or there's not. And then it comes out, and that's what needs to, that's the formula. That's all movies are kind of built around that. And they're having trouble figuring out what that is. So they're debating like this character, which is me, saying this guy. And I think he's definitely, it's a journey of faith. And it's, and the adversary is maybe Satan or the devil or darkness. And it's like, no. It's survivor's guilt, because he lost so many people in his life. And he had, there were the suicides that were around him, and the car accidents, and he lived through different things. And why, and I'm right here. It's not a character, it's me.
But isn't this interesting? Because you don't, okay, here's why. At a certain place, like think about Jesus, for example. How many people think they know Jesus and tell his story?
Right.
And if you were able to ask Jesus today, he'd be like, I don't even know what to say, because it's surrendered at that point. It's like, I think that's the part you're on right now. It's like surrendering your very identity to the collective. It's like, it's not about you anymore. Like, right. It is your journey, but the gifts you received were on behalf of the collective. They aren't yours.
Yeah, and the thing that I think most about during this, because this is, I mean, I wish everybody could go through this, because it's really like, it's like almost like writing your own obituary, trying to live it. It's like, okay, did he do that? I don't know. Did he achieve that? And it's all these pieces go in there, and I'm thinking, I have to let go of it. But the number one thing that I always think about is the other people that I've affected or that have come into the fold, and I want to treat them with respect. And I'm more concerned about how they're handled or how their
Mhm.
persona is. I said, yeah, I'll own everything I did. I don't want to, release something that could be harmful to someone else, because that's not what this is about. It's not about airing that stuff. It's about the love that was experienced in all these things, and the compassion in the people that have been there, and even, people that were seemingly were the adversary ended up being the person that showed, where that ended up saving me in some way too.
Yeah, so you're talking about a lot of reversals. And so in a way, your life has been a teaching moment for not only yourself, but then as it gets translated into a script, it's potentially a teaching moment for a lot of different people. And you've got to keep your hands in the pie, because there's different levels of understanding
Right.
about these things. And like you said, that frame that can be placed over things can be a beautiful frame or a little kludgy, So
Yeah.
what you want it to be a beautiful frame that really teaches a lot of people.
Yeah. And that's the whole point, is that it's going to bring hope to people, because that's what I've been doing. That's with this experience. I've had so many people that have contacted me who've lost a child or something, and they're at peace after I speak to them, because I know, I know they're okay. I know there is a heaven, and it's only love, and it's the only way I can describe it to them is like this single note, and it seems like nothing on this side, but it's a complete symphony of beautiful music that's for eternity, that is sung by a choir of angels that you can't even understand. But over here, it sounds like doing one tone, and it's not a song.
Yeah, it's the great symphony. Yeah, and we are creators. This is our, this is like the opportunity is to realize that this is the creation space. This is a space to actually practice creation together, with love. And so as we're learning, maybe sometimes it's a little messy. We forgive each other, right? Learn a little bit better next time. Keep the game going and see what we can create next.
And the other is that in human form, we're all flawed. But the thing that you have to understand is that it's like being a diamond that has a flaw. When you hold it to the light, it still shines. And that's really kind of what life journey is for me. It's being that flawed diamond and trying to seek the light and get out of the dark or the shadows. And I also received this, speaking of light, we always think of everything in opposites, in that, you have hot and cold and anger and happy and so on and so forth. The only thing that doesn't fit that mold is light and darkness. It seems like it does, but it doesn't. Because darkness, when you add it together, doesn't change. When you add light together, it gets brighter. And when you introduce light, even the smallest thing to the darkness no longer exists. When you add darkness to the light, nothing changes, because the light creates the dark. And so that there's only shadows around us. And if we choose to stand in that shadow, you're still experiencing the light, because the shadow was created by it that's around you.
Yeah, well, that's another way of saying that we're conscious co-creators, and we created everything that we're experiencing now. It's sort of like a little menu. Yeah, I want to experience this, 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 and this. And some of it feels gritty, because it in fact is being sandpapered. It's sandpapering some little edges around us so we can be even more in our truth while we're here.
Right.
It's a game. I really believe it's a game. I think it is a soul game. And we're learning through this process more about ourselves and about each other and the whole mechanism. So
Exactly.
enjoy the game. I mean, the pain hurts, yes, but it's part of the experience. And then you know how much you love that person, because let's say they die and you have all the pain because they're like, oh, my dad. I love my dad so much. And because my dad died, I was able to really understand so much better the role he was playing in my family and in my own life. Through his absence, I became aware of the power of his love. That's a gift
Yeah. Well,
because
I
it
just
helps me
got
to rise
words.
up.
The words that came to me were that love is an unending race that everyone wins.
Everybody wins. Yeah, love always wins. Think about love. That's right. And, and don't be so mad at those shadows because love created them.
Right.
So it's okay. Yeah, exactly.
You still dance in the shadows and shine in the light. Doesn't matter. It's the
Sure
same
can.
thing.
You can stew around in those shadows all day long if you want. I mean, hey, I talk about this sometimes. My middle son, when he was little, he just loved to sit in his poopy diapers. He loved it. It was like his favorite thing to do. And I didn't understand that, but he liked it, and I had to keep checking on him to make sure he wasn't doing it. So, I think sometimes we do like to be in our stink a little bit. We like, if
Sometimes literally.
sometimes literally it feels good to be in it. That's okay. And we can shift out of it and become aware. So I think that's the blessing. We get to choose, or like you said.
See, you just said it. Shift happens. So there you go.
Take off the diapers. Anyway, it's my favorite analogy lately because it just makes it so fun to me. Okay, so well, thank you for this. This has been really beautiful insights into being a messenger and why your life is now being made into a movie for other people to enjoy, and the process behind the scenes, a lot of humbleness. And,
Yeah.
also like own it, Robert, because this was the journey that your soul gifted you so that you could powerfully speak for the collective.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope I fulfill. And that's what I want to do, is just to share this, and I want people to be so inspired just to go out and do something beautiful for someone else after seeing this.
Yeah, me too. I desire that too. As a matter of fact, you can start now. You can start now by sharing this episode out to somebody that you know that's going through some grief right now. They're going through a challenge. They are having a hard time accepting what's happened for them, to them, whatever
Right.
the current belief system is. And this will hopefully help them to understand that it's happening through them actually, and that they're a vessel for something bigger through Robert's story. So share it out, like, comment. And go over to Mindset Reset Show and like and comment on that show as well, so that Robert's message gets out there more. And anything you want to share with people in terms of a place to get started, knowing a little bit more about what you do in the world, or just your books are a good place to start?
Yeah, if you go to guidetothesoul.com, everything's there. So you can get to the show, the Mindset Reset Show. You can go, the books are there, the links to my social media. I just, decided to share these with the world, and so many people have just, joined that page, and it just keeps going and going and going. That's, and I just, when the words come to me, I just post them up there.
Beautiful. I love that. I totally understand that download thing. Awesome. Well, so go check all that stuff out. I'll put the links down in the show notes below, and you'll get started with Robert. And then, I like to give people kisses on the way out, Robert. So I invite you to help me give kisses.
Yes.
Okay, here they go.
Right.
Mwah.
Just go.
Love you guys.
And then it comes right to here.
It goes back. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now.